A woman stands in front of a federal judge. She's wearing black. Her voice, that famous baritone voice, is barely audible as she hears the verdict. 11 years in prison. This is Elizabeth Holmes. 7 years earlier, she was worth $5 billion. She had fooled the world's most powerful investors. She had convinced former secretaries of state to join her board. And she had done it all with a product that never worked, putting real patients' lives at risk. In 2003, Elizabeth Holmes promised something revolutionary. Hundreds of blood tests from just a finger prick, results in minutes, no needles, no waiting. It was healthcare's holy grail. By 2014, Theranos was valued at $9 billion. Elizabeth was the youngest self-made female billionaire in history. She appeared on magazine covers as the next Steve Jobs. Walgreens and Safeway poured hundreds of millions into partnerships. The board included Henry Kissinger, George Shultz, and General James Mattis. But it was all built on lies. Theranos tested cancer patients with machines that didn't work. They faked results for Vice President Joe Biden. And when one scientist threatened to expose the truth, he took his own life. This is the story of Theranos, Silicon Valley's greatest disaster, and how one Stanford dropout convinced everyone she had changed the world. The origin of deception. Elizabeth Holmes had one obsession from childhood, becoming a billionaire, not a millionaire, a billionaire. At 19, she dropped out of Stanford with an idea, a machine that could run hundreds of blood tests from a single drop of blood. She raised $6 million in her first year by riding on the reputation of her investors. But when she approached investors who specialized in medicine, her lack of knowledge showed. She'd only spent a few semesters at Stanford. Here's the problem. Tech entrepreneurs like Mark Zuckerberg can drop out and succeed because coding can be mastered young. But medicine and chemistry require decades of research and expertise. Elizabeth didn't have that, but she had something else. The ability to manipulate anyone. By 2006, Theranos had built the Edison machine. It was supposed to revolutionize blood testing. Patients would prick their fingers, store blood in a small cartridge, and push it into the machine for instant results. Traditionally, blood testing required drawing a syringe from a vein, sending it to a lab with massive machines, and waiting days for results. Theranos promised to change everything. There was just one problem. The technology was impossible. Blood testing is incredibly complex. Different components test for different things. Some shoot beams of light, others require chemical reactions. When placed close together, these components interfere with each other through heat, light, and electrical activity. Worse, to get enough blood from a finger prick, samples had to be diluted. Over-diluted samples gave wildly inaccurate results. For the technology to work, Theranos needed major breakthroughs on every front of blood analysis. They never made them. But Elizabeth didn't let that stop her. She just started lying. In 2006, the company's chief financial officer discovered Elizabeth had been lying to investors. He confronted her. She fired him on the spot and never hired another CFO for a decade. The cancer patients. By 2007, Elizabeth had developed an obsession with Steve Jobs. She found a newspaper cutout calling her the next Steve Jobs and kept it on her desk. The obsession was insane. When she learned Steve scheduled marketing meetings on Wednesdays, she did the same with the same firm. She recruited Apple employees, including Avi Tevanian, one of Jobs' oldest friends. She even changed her voice. Elizabeth spoke in a low baritone to be taken more seriously. On occasion, she forgot and was caught using her natural voice before dropping several tones. But here's where it gets dark. Elizabeth started running tests on cancer patients. She partnered with Pfizer to test Edison on real people with serious illnesses. She knew the product didn't work. Blood tests drive 70% of doctors' medical decisions. If results are false, it could be fatal. Doctors use them to adjust medication or diagnose conditions requiring immediate action. The only reason the trials proceeded was that Elizabeth lied to everyone about how well the product worked. By 2009, her boyfriend Sunny Balwani joined as second in command. He came from software and had zero medical knowledge, but he knew how to control people through fear. He constantly fired employees and watched CCTV footage to monitor how long they worked. Elizabeth backed every decision. She told employees, "If anyone believes you're not working on the best thing humans have ever built, Or, if you're cynical, then you should leave. Anyone who agreed with Elizabeth got promoted. By 2012, Walgreens and Safeway had invested over $450 million combined. But Theranos still couldn't deliver working machines. So they did something shocking. They ran tests on existing commercial machines and lied, claiming they used Theranos technology. The death and the lies. In May 2013, Ian Gibbons, who led Theranos' chemistry team, received a subpoena. He was being called to testify in a lawsuit against Theranos. Ian knew the truth. The technology didn't work. He feared that testifying would expose everything. Ian was miserable at Theranos. He'd been demoted, but at 67, he feared leaving would make finding another job impossible. 2 days before his testimony, Ian's wife Rochelle found him in the bathroom. He'd overdosed on medication. He died a week later in the hospital. Elizabeth Holmes didn't return Rochelle's call about her husband's death. She informed only a small number of employees and never held a service. She brushed off Ian's death and moved on. Meanwhile, the lies escalated. Financial forecasts given to investors were 10 times higher than internal projections. The numbers were completely fabricated, but money kept pouring in. Rupert Murdoch invested $125 million. The Walton brothers put in $150 million. The DeVos family added another $100 million. Theranos reached a $9 billion valuation. Elizabeth was worth $5 billion personally. Elizabeth even threw Hillary Clinton a fundraiser. She had everyone fooled, but one person was about to bring it all down. The fake lab. Tyler Schultz, grandson of board member George Schultz, worked at Theranos. He noticed the machines didn't work and that tests were run on commercial equipment, not Theranos devices. He quit and told his grandfather everything. Incredibly, Elizabeth had such control over George Schultz that he disregarded his own grandson's warnings. But Tyler didn't give up. He joined forces with Richard Foyce, a doctor and family friend who'd been fighting Theranos for years. They also recruited Ian Gibbons' widow, Rochelle. Together, they took everything to John Carreyrou at the Wall Street Journal. As John investigated, former employees came forward anonymously. Theranos attacked everyone, threatening lawsuits and hiring private investigators to stalk suspects. Meanwhile, Elizabeth continued the charade. In 2014, Fortune magazine put her on the cover. This CEO is out for blood. She joined Harvard Medical School's Board of Fellows. Then Vice President Joe Biden visited Theranos. He was shown a completely fake lab set up just for his visit. They pricked his finger, waited until he left, then ran his blood on commercial machines. Biden called it the lab of the future. It was all theater, and the curtain was about to fall. The collapse. On October 15, 2015, the Wall Street Journal published the truth. It was a bombshell. Elizabeth didn't hide. She went on television and lied directly to the public. But this time, no one believed her. The FDA inspected Theranos and found the Edison performed only 12 out of 250 tests. Even those produced wildly erratic results. Investors sued. Walgreens sued for $140 million. Theranos voided nearly 1 million patient test results. Elizabeth fired Sonny. Criminal investigations began. The SEC charged her with fraud. In March 2018, Elizabeth settled with the SEC. She lost control of the company, gave away her stock, and was banned from being an officer or director of any public company for 10 years. Theranos dissolved in September 2018. In January 2022, Elizabeth Holmes was convicted on 4 counts of fraud. She was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison. Silicon Valley's greatest disaster. A $9 billion empire built on nothing but lies.